The massive hall of the Galactic Council stretched as far as the eye could see. Thousands of seats filled the curved walls, each one holding a representative from a different alien species. The air hummed with the sound of translation devices, working overtime, turning alien words into something everyone could understand. Captain Jake Morrison sat in the small human section, feeling very much out of place. His simple blue uniform looked plain next to the glowing robes and crystal armor worn by the other delegates. The humans had only been part of this grand council for 2 years, ever since Earth had finally figured out how to travel faster than light. The center of the hall held a floating platform where the most important aliens gave their speeches. Today, they were talking about a war that had been going on for 3 years between 2 powerful alien empires. Jake had read the reports. Millions of ships destroyed, entire planets turned to ash. It was the biggest war the galaxy had seen in centuries. Council leader Vextar rose from his seat. He was an Altarian, tall and thin, with skin that looked like polished silver. When he spoke, his voice carried to every corner of the massive hall without any effort. Fellow beings of the galaxy, Vextar began, we gather today to discuss the ongoing conflict between the Zephyrian Empire and the Corvan Federation. This war has lasted 3 solar cycles with no end in sight. Both sides have lost countless ships and warriors. Jake leaned forward in his seat. He had studied both empires during his flight to the council station. The Zephyrians were masters of energy weapons. Their ships were made of special crystals that could focus and amplify power beyond anything humans had ever seen. The Corvans were different. They grew their ships like living things, using biotechnology that could adapt and change during battle. The destruction grows worse each day, Vextar continued. The Zephyrians have lost 12 battle fleets in the past month. Alone, the Corvans have seen their fortress worlds cracked open like eggs. Neither side will accept defeat. Other delegates began to speak. Jake listened as they described weapons that could destroy entire moons, shields that could stop almost any attack, and tactics that had been perfected over thousands of years of warfare. These civilizations had been fighting wars when humans were still learning to make fire. When there was a pause in the discussion, Jake stood up. Every head in the hall turned toward him. Thousands of alien eyes looked at the lone human representative. Council Leader Vextar, Jake said, his voice steady despite the attention. Earth would like to offer our help in solving this conflict. We have some experience with ending wars. The hall fell silent for a moment. Then, slowly, a sound began to build. It started as a low rumble and grew into what could only be described as laughter. Not the cruel kind of laughter that hurt, but the kind that came from finding something amusing and harmless. High Commander Zethkal of the Zephyrian Empire stood up. His body was made of what looked like living crystal, and light danced through him as he moved. When he spoke, his voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Honorable human, Zethkal said, and Jake could hear the smile in his voice. We appreciate your offer, but perhaps you do not understand the scale of this conflict. Our ships are powered by controlled stars. Our weapons can tear holes in space itself. Your vessels still use chemical rockets and metal bullets. More laughter rippled through the hall. Admiral Kravis of the Corvan Federation rose from her seat. She looked like a mixture of plant and animal, with bark-like skin and leaves that grew from her shoulders. Her voice was deep and rich, like the sound of wind through a forest. The human shows courage, Kravis said, but courage alone cannot win wars of this magnitude. Your ships are built from simple metal. They have no proper shields. Your weapons are centuries behind our technology. How could such primitive tools help in a conflict between advanced civilizations? Jake felt his face grow warm, but he kept his expression calm. Around him, Other delegates were nodding and making sounds of agreement. A delegate from the Centauri Republic, whose blue skin shimmered with built-in computers, spoke up. "I mean, no offense to our human friends," the Centauri said, "but their entire fleet could not match a single one of our patrol ships. They have been in space for barely 50 years. We have been traveling between stars for 50,000. The Altarian delegate next to the Centauri added, "Their fastest ships take months to cross distances we cover in hours. Their computers are so simple they cannot even interface with our basic systems." More voices joined in. A delegate from the Andromedan Collective mentioned that human ships had no artificial intelligence. A representative from the Vega Commonwealth noted that human weapons could not even penetrate basic military shields. Someone from the Rigel Syndicate pointed out that human medicine was so primitive they still got sick from tiny organisms. Jake listened to it all without speaking. He had expected this reaction. Earth's military leaders had warned him that the other species saw humans as barely evolved animals who had stumbled into space travel by accident. The fact that humans had achieved faster than light travel using methods the aliens considered crude and dangerous only made them seem more primitive. "We understand your concerns," Jake said when the comments died down. "But sometimes a fresh perspective can help. Sometimes simple solutions work better than complex ones." This brought another wave of gentle laughter. Vexstar raised one silver hand, and the hall grew quiet again. "Captain Morrison," Vexstar said, "we do not doubt human good intentions. But this war involves weapons and tactics that your species has never encountered. Ships that can rebuild themselves during battle. Weapons that can destroy matter at the atomic level. Shields that exist partially outside normal space. Your bravery is admirable, but this conflict requires tools and knowledge that take millennia to develop." Jake nodded slowly. "I understand, Council Leader, but Earth's offer remains open. If you change your minds, we are ready to help." As the session continued, Jake remained in his seat, listening to the discussions about strategy and weapons technology. He heard delegates talking about battles fought with millions of ships, about planets turned into weapons, about forces that could rearrange matter itself. But he also heard something else. He heard frustration. Despite all their advanced technology and ancient wisdom, these great civilizations could not end a war that was destroying both sides. Their superior weapons had created a balance of terror that kept the conflict going, without resolution. When the session ended, Jake walked through the corridors toward his ship. He passed groups of aliens discussing the war in voices that mixed respect with pity for the humans who thought they could help. "Did you hear the human offer to mediate?" one delegate was saying to another, as if their metal boxes could survive 5 minutes in a real battle. "They mean well," came the reply, "but they are like children playing with toys, thinking they understand war because they can make loud noises." Jake reached his ship, a simple vessel that looked crude and basic compared to the elegant alien craft in the docking bay. As he prepared to leave, he made a mental note to include everything he had heard in his report to Earth Command. The galaxy's most powerful civilizations were locked in a war they could not end, and they were too proud to accept help from anyone they considered beneath them. He had no way of knowing that in just a few weeks, everything would change. The war that seemed impossible to stop would reach a crisis point, and humanity would get a chance to prove that sometimes the simplest solutions were the most effective ones. As his ship left the council station, Jake looked back at the massive structure that housed representatives from thousands of worlds. Somewhere in that war between the Zephyrians and Corvons, an opportunity would come. And when it did, humanity would be ready. 3 weeks after the council meeting, the war between the Zephyrian Empire and the Corvan Federation reached its most dangerous point. The battle was happening at a place called Kepler's Gate, a spot in space where 7 different star systems connected through hyperspace tunnels. Whoever controlled Kepler's Gate could control trade and military movement across a huge part of the galaxy. The Zephyrian Empire had sent their most powerful fleet to capture the gate. At the center of this fleet was the Stellar Dominion, a ship so massive it looked like a flying city. The ship was 12 kilometers long and 3 kilometers wide, built from crystals that glowed with inner light. Its hull was covered with weapon ports that could fire beams hot enough to melt planets. Fleet Admiral Tisara stood on the bridge of the Stellar Dominion, watching the tactical displays that showed the approaching enemy. She was beautiful in the way that all Zephyrians were beautiful, with skin like polished diamond and hair that moved like liquid light. Her uniform was made of crystal fibers that sparkled with every movement. Enemy fleet approaching from the 7th quadrant, reported her tactical officer. The Corvan Federation has deployed their primary battle group. Tisara nodded. She had been fighting the Corvans for most of her adult life, and she knew their tactics well. They would send their bioships forward in waves, each one designed to learn from the death of the ones before it. It was a brutal but effective way to fight. The Corvan fleet was led by the Flesh Render, a ship that looked like it had been grown rather than built. Its hull was covered with what looked like armor made from bone and muscle, but Tisara knew it was far stronger than any metal. The ship could heal itself during battle, growing new weapons and defenses as needed. War Master Gortham commanded. The Flesh Render from a bridge that looked more like the inside of a living creature than a spaceship. The walls pulsed with a slow heartbeat, and the air smelled of growing things. Gortham himself was a mixture of plant and animal, with thick, bark-like skin and eyes that glowed with green light. Zephyrian crystal ships detected. His biosensors reported. The voice came from a creature that was part of the ship itself, speaking through organs that had been grown specifically for communication. Primary target confirmed as the Stellar Dominion. Gortham smiled, showing teeth that looked like thorns. Excellent. Today we will show these crystal beings that flesh is stronger than stone. The battle began at long range, as space battles always did. The Zephyrian ships fired beams of pure energy that could cut through almost any material. The beams were so hot, they turned space itself into a glowing plasma. The Corvan ships responded with volleys of bone spears, projectiles that had been grown in bioforges and could track their targets across vast distances. The first exchanges lit up the darkness around Kepler's Gate. Zephyrian crystal lance beams met Corvan bone spears and explosions that could be seen from neighboring star systems. Both fleets began the complex dance of three-dimensional warfare, their ships moving in patterns that had been perfected over thousands of years of conflict. A Zephyrian light cruiser exploded as a bone spear penetrated its crystal matrix. Ship died in a cascade of rainbow light, its energy core overloading and sending waves of color through space. At the same time, a Corvan bioship writhed in agony as crystal lance beams burned through its living hull. The ship's death cries could be heard on biofrequencies across the fleet dot as the hours passed. The battle grew more intense. Both sides brought their deadliest weapons to bear. The Zephyrians fired crystal storms that could shatter matter at the molecular level. The Corvans released swarms of fighter organisms that could eat through enemy hulls like acid dot. The space around Kepler's Gate became a graveyard. Pieces of destroyed ships drifted through the void, some still glowing with residual energy, others still twitching with biomechanical life. The debris field grew thicker as more ships fell on both sides. On the Stellar Dominion, Fleet Admiral Tisara watched the battle displays with growing frustration. Her fleet was losing ships at an alarming rate, but the Corvans were losing just as many. Neither side was gaining a clear advantage. "Status report," she commanded. "We have lost 47 ships," her tactical officer reported. "The enemy has lost 52. Both fleets are at 60% combat effectiveness." Tissara's crystal features hardened. This was exactly what she had hoped to avoid. A battle of attrition would hurt both sides badly, and even if the Zephyrians won, they would be too weakened to hold Kepler's Gate against reinforcements. On the Flesh Render, War Master Gortham was having similar thoughts. His bioships were adaptive, but they needed time to evolve new defenses. The Zephyrians were not, giving them that time. "Damage report," he growled. 38 ships lost," came the reply from his biosensors. "The enemy has lost 41. Our adaptation protocols are struggling to keep pace with their energy weapons." Gortham slammed his fist against the living wall of his bridge. The ship shuddered in response, feeling his anger through the neural connections that linked commander to vessel. Both fleet commanders realized they needed to end this battle quickly. Prolonged fighting would destroy both fleets and leave the gate open for some other power to claim. They needed to use their most powerful weapons, the ones they had been holding in reserve. Fleet Admiral Tissara made the decision first. "Prepare the reality disruptors," she ordered. A shocked silence fell over the bridge. The reality disruptor torpedoes were the Zephyrian Empire's most closely guarded secret. They were weapons that could tear holes in space-time itself, creating temporary black holes that would consume anything nearby. The weapons were so dangerous that using them required approval from the highest levels of the Empire. "Admiral," her tactical officer said carefully, "the Emperor has not authorized the use of reality disruptors." "The Emperor gave me authority to win this battle by any means necessary," Tissara replied. "Prepare the weapons." At the same time, War Master Gortham was making his own desperate choice. "Release the Devour Spores," he commanded. His bio-officers looked at him in alarm. The Devour Spores were living weapons that could consume any matter they touched, breaking it down at the atomic level and using the energy to reproduce. They were so dangerous that the Federation had banned their use except in the most extreme circumstances. "War Master," one of his officers said, "the spores cannot be controlled once released. They will consume everything in this system. Then we must finish this battle before they consume us." Gortham replied. Both superweapons began charging. The reality disruptors required massive amounts of energy to tear holes in space-time. The crystal matrices throughout the stellar dominion began to glow brighter as power flowed into the weapons. The Devour Spores needed time to multiply and reach critical mass. Bioforges throughout the Flesh Render began producing the tiny organisms at an incredible rate. As the weapons charged, both fleets continued their conventional battle. But now there was a new urgency to the fighting. Every ship captain knew that something terrible was about to happen. The space around Kepler's Gate crackled with tension as both sides prepared to use weapons that could destroy everything in the system. The first signs of the superweapons appeared as small distortions. In space, near the stellar dominion, tiny black holes began to form and disappear as the reality disruptors tested their power. Around the Flesh Render, the space itself began to look hungry as the Devour Spores started their work. Automated systems throughout both fleets began broadcasting emergency warnings. The computers could calculate what would happen if both weapons fired at the same time. The reality disruptors would tear holes in space-time. The Devour Spores would consume everything they could reach. Together, they would create a chain reaction that could destroy the entire star system, but neither commander was willing to back down. Too much was at stake. Too many ships had already been lost. The war had gone on too long for either side to accept defeat. Now got the warnings spread beyond the battle zone. Emergency broadcasts went out on all frequencies, alerting every ship and station in the area. The messages were clear. 2 superweapons were about to be used simultaneously, and the results would be catastrophic. Far from the battle, on the edge of human space, one of those emergency signals was received by a small patrol ship. The USS Defiant was making a routine patrol when its communications officer picked up the automated distress call. Captain Lisa Harper read the message on her command screen and felt her blood run cold. 2 alien empires were about to use weapons that could destroy entire star systems. Billions of innocent lives were at risk. The Defiant was just a destroyer, small and simple by galactic standards. But it was the only ship in range that could possibly do anything to help. Captain Harper faced a choice that would change everything: follow her orders to avoid alien conflicts, or risk her ship and crew to save lives. The battle at Kepler's Gate was about to take a turn that no one expected. Captain Lisa Harper stood on the bridge of the USS Defiant, staring at the emergency message that had just arrived. The words on the screen seemed impossible to believe. 2 alien empires were about to use weapons that could destroy entire star systems. The automated warning said that billions of lives were at risk. The Defiant was patrolling the outer edge of human space when the message came in. It was a routine mission, the kind that usually involved checking on cargo ships and making sure space lanes were clear. Now Harper faced a decision that could change everything. "Captain," said Lieutenant Ben Parker from the communication station, "we're getting more emergency signals. The situation at Kepler's Gate is getting worse." Harper looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew. They were good people, all of them. They had trained hard to serve on one of Earth's newest destroyers, but none of them had ever seen real combat. The Defiant had been built to patrol human space, not to fight alien empires. Commander Ryan Torres, her tactical officer, was studying the technical readouts. "Captain, if these reports are accurate, we're looking at weapons that make our most powerful bombs look like firecrackers." Lieutenant Amy Collins, the chief engineer, shook her head as she read the data. "These reality disruptors can tear holes in space itself. The Devour spores will eat anything they touch. If both weapons fire at the same time, the reaction could spread to other star systems." Harper felt the weight of command pressing down on her. Her orders were clear: avoid contact with alien military forces and report any unusual activity to Earth Command. But Earth Command was weeks away, and the battle at Kepler's Gate was happening now. "How long to reach Kepler's Gate?" she asked. Collins checked her instruments. 6 hours at maximum speed, Captain. But we'd have to push the engines past their safe limits. "And our weapons?" Harper asked Torres. The tactical officer grimaced. "We've got railguns, missile launchers, and 1 experimental particle beam cannon. By galactic standards, we're barely armed. Our whole ship is smaller than the gun turrets on those alien dreadnoughts." Harper walked to the front of the bridge and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, 2 massive fleets were preparing to use weapons that could kill billions of innocent people. The smart thing to do was to send a message to Earth Command and wait for orders. But waiting meant letting those weapons fire. "Captain," Parker said quietly, "there's something else. The emergency signals aren't just from the battle zone. There are civilian ships in the area. Cargo haulers, passenger liners, research vessels. If those super weapons go off, they'll all be destroyed." That decided it for Harper. She turned back to her crew. "All hands prepare for emergency jump to Kepler's Gate. We're going to try to help." The bridge fell silent for a moment. Then Torres spoke up. "Captain, we're 1 small ship against 2 of the most powerful fleets in the galaxy. What can we possibly do?" Harper looked at her tactical officer. "I don't know, Commander, but we have to try." The next 6 hours passed in a blur of preparation. The Defiant's crew worked frantically to get their ship ready for what might be the most dangerous mission any human had ever attempted. Collins pushed the engines to their absolute limits. coaxing every bit of speed from the ship's systems. Torres ran diagnostics on every weapon system, making sure everything was working perfectly. Parker monitored the emergency broadcasts, keeping track of the situation at Kepler's gate. The news was getting worse by the hour. The reality disruptors are at 60% charge, Parker reported. The Devour spores have reached critical mass. Both weapons could fire within the next 2 hours. Harper nodded grimly. The Defiant was still 4 hours away. Can we go any faster? She asked Collins. The engineer shook her head. We're already redlining the engines, Captain. If we push them any harder, we risk a core breach. Harper made another hard decision. Do it. Push them harder. Collins looked shocked. Captain, that's incredibly dangerous. We could blow up before we even reach the battle. If we don't reach the battle, those weapons will kill billions of people, Harper replied. Take the risk. The Defiant shuddered as Collins pushed. The engines beyond their design limits. The ship's hull groaned under the stress, but they gained precious speed. The journey time dropped to 4 hours, then 3.5 as they got closer to Kepler's gate. The crew could see the signs of the massive battle ahead. Space was filled with debris from destroyed ships. Energy readings spiked as the two fleets continued their deadly dance. The reality disruptors were causing small distortions in space-time that registered on the Defiant's sensors. Captain, Torres said, I'm reading weapons signatures that our computers can't even classify. The energy levels are off the charts. Distance. To battle zone? Harper asked. 30 minutes, Parker replied. But Captain, we're picking up communications from both fleets. They're ordering us to stay away. Harper listened to the alien voices on the communication channels. Even through the translation software, she could hear the arrogance in their words. They were telling that primitive human ship to leave before it got hurt. Open a channel to both fleet commanders, Harper ordered. The screen split to show two alien faces. On one side was Fleet Admiral Tessara of the Zephyrian Empire, her crystal features beautiful and cold. On the other side was War Master Gortham of the Corvin Federation, his bark-like skin and glowing eyes making him look like a living tree. Unknown human vessel, Tessara said, her voice like wind chimes. You are entering a combat zone. Leave immediately or be destroyed. Gortham's voice was deeper, like the sound of wind through leaves. Small metal ship, this battle is beyond your understanding. Return to your own space before you are caught in forces that will tear you apart. Harper kept her voice calm and professional. Fleet Admiral, War Master, I am Captain Lisa Harper of the USS Defiant. We've received emergency broadcasts about superweapons being prepared for use. We're here to help prevent a catastrophe. Both alien commanders looked at her with what could only be described as pity. Tessara spoke first. Captain Harper, you pilot a ship that would be considered primitive by the standards of our maintenance crews. Your weapons cannot penetrate our basic shields. Your engines are slow and crude. How do you propose to help in a battle between advanced civilizations? Gortham nodded in agreement. Human, your species has been in space for barely 50 years. We have been perfecting the art of war for 50,000. Your metal box cannot survive what is about to happen here. Harper felt her temper rise, but she kept it under control. With respect, Fleet Admiral and War Master, those superweapons you're preparing to use will kill billions of innocent people. There has to be another way. There is no other way, Tessara replied. This war has gone on too long. Too many of our people have died. The reality disruptors will end this conflict. The Devour spores will consume our enemies, Gortham added. Victory will be ours, whatever the cost. Harper realized that diplomacy was not going to work. Both commanders were too proud and too committed to their course of action. They would. Rather destroy everything than admit they might be wrong. Then we'll have to stop you, Harper said quietly. Both alien commanders looked at her in amazement. Then they began to laugh. It was not cruel laughter, but the kind that came from hearing. Something so impossible it was funny. "Stop us?" Tessara said between laughs. "Little human, you have one ship. We have fleets of thousands. Your weapons are toys compared to ours. You are brave," Hortham said, "but bravery cannot overcome the laws of physics. Your ship will be destroyed the moment you enter our weapon range." Harper cut the communication channel and turned to her crew. "All right, people. They won't listen to reason. We're going to have to do this the hard way." "Captain," Torres said, "what exactly are we going to do? We can't fight both fleets at once." Harper looked at the tactical display showing the positions of both superweapons. "We're not going to fight them, Commander. We're going to outsmart them." The Defiant dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the battle zone. Immediately, every sensor in both alien fleets turned toward the small human ship. On their screens, the Defiant looked like a tiny metal needle compared to the massive alien dreadnoughts. Harper could see the stellar dominion in the distance, its crystal hull glowing with stored energy. The reality disruptors were almost ready to fire. On the other side of the battle zone, the flesh render pulsed with biological activity as the Devour spores reached their final stage of preparation. "Both weapons will fire in less than 1 hour," Parker reported. Harper nodded. "Then we have 1 hour to save the galaxy." The crew of the Defiant looked at their captain with a mixture of fear and admiration. They were about to attempt something that the galaxy's most advanced civilizations considered impossible. But they were human, and humans had a long history of doing the impossible. "All stations, prepare for combat," Harper ordered. "We're going in." The small human ship began to move toward the center of the battle zone, heading directly for the Cho. Space between the two superweapons. Behind them, the alien fleets watched in amazement as the primitive humans flew toward certain destruction. But Harper had a plan. It was crazy, dangerous, and probably suicidal. But it was also the only chance. They had to prevent a catastrophe that would destroy entire star systems. A moment of truth. The USS Defiant moved through the battle zone like a tiny fish swimming between two massive whales. All around the human ship, the wreckage of the alien battle drifted in space. Pieces of crystal ships glowed with dying energy, while chunks of bioships still twitched with fading life. Captain Lisa Harper watched the tactical display as her ship approached the center of the conflict. The two superweapons were almost ready to fire. The reality disruptors on the stellar dominion were charging up with enough energy to tear holes in space itself. The Devour spores on the flesh render had reached critical mass and were ready to consume everything they touched. "Weapons lock from multiple ships," Commander Ryan Torres reported. "Both fleets are targeting us." Harper nodded. She had expected this. The alien commanders might think humans were primitive, but they were not going to ignore a ship that flew directly into their battle zone. "Evasive maneuvers," Harper ordered. "Take us through the debris field." Lieutenant Amy Collins, the chief engineer, pushed the Defiant's engines to their limits. The ship twisted and turned through the wreckage, using the debris as cover. The aliens fired at them with weapons that could destroy planets, but the Defiant was small and fast enough to dodge between the massive chunks of destroyed ships. "They're trying to hurt us away from the superweapons," Torres observed. Harper smiled grimly. "That's exactly what I was hoping for. They think we're trying to run away." The truth was different. Harper was using the alien attacks to get closer to both superweapons. Every time the aliens fired at the Defiant, the human ship moved a little closer to its target. The aliens were so focused on chasing away the primitive human ship that they did not notice the pattern. "Captain," Lieutenant. Ben Parker called from the communications station. I'm reading the alien communication channels. They're calling us annoyingly persistent insects and brave but stupid creatures. Let them think that, Harper replied. How long until the superweapons fire? 30 minutes, Parker answered. Harper turned to her crew. All right, people. It's time to show them what humans can really do. Torres, I need you to target the reality disruptors with our particle beam cannon. But don't try to destroy them. Torres looked confused. Captain, if we're not trying to destroy them, what are we trying to do? We're going to overload their crystal matrix, Harper explained. The Zephyrians use crystal technology to focus and amplify energy. If we hit them with the right frequency, we can make their own power work against them. Collins looked up from her engineering station. That's brilliant, Captain. But how do we know what frequency to use? Harper smiled. Because we've been listening to their communications for the past hour. Every time they talk, their translation devices give us information about their technology. Parker, you've been monitoring their frequencies, right? Parker nodded. Yes, Captain. I've got detailed readings on their crystal resonance patterns. Good. Collins, can you modify our particle beam to match those frequencies? The engineer's eyes lit up with understanding. Yes, Captain. It will take a few minutes, but I can tune our weapons to their exact specifications. What about the bioship? Torres asked. How do we stop the devour spores? Harper's smile grew wider. We're going to give them a computer virus. The crew looked at her in amazement. Torres was the first to speak. Captain, bioships don't use computer systems like we do. They're living organisms. That's true, Harper agreed. But they still process information. They still make decisions. And Parker has been monitoring their biocommunication networks. Parker looked excited. I see what you're thinking, Captain. Their biosystems work like organic computers. If we can upload a logic bomb into their network, we can confuse their decision-making process. Exactly, Harper said. The devour spores are controlled by the bioship's brain. If we can scramble the control signals, the spores will turn against their own ship. Collins shook her head in admiration. Captain, that's the craziest plan I've ever heard. It just might work. It has to work, Harper replied. We're the only ones who can stop this. The Defiant continued to weave through the battle zone, dodging alien weapons while getting closer to both superweapons. The ship's hull was scorched by near misses, and several systems were damaged by the intense energy fields surrounding the massive alien vessels. Both weapons are at 90% charge, Parker reported. 10 minutes until firing. Harper felt sweat on her forehead. They were running out of time. Collins, status on the particle beam modifications? Almost done, Captain. The frequency is locked in. Parker, what about the virus? Ready to upload, Captain. I've disguised it as a standard biocommunication signal. They won't know what hit them until it's too late. Harper looked at the tactical display. The Defiant was now positioned between the two superweapons, exactly where she wanted to be. But they were also in the most dangerous spot in the galaxy. When those weapons fired, everything in the area would be destroyed. Fleet Admiral Tissara is hailing us, Parker reported. Harper nodded. Put her on screen. The Zephyrian commander appeared on the display, her crystal features showing genuine concern. Captain Harper, you have positioned your ship between our weapons. When we fire, you will be destroyed instantly. This is your last chance to retreat. Thank you for your concern, Fleet Admiral, Harper replied. But we're not retreating. Tissara looked puzzled. Then what are you doing? Your ship cannot survive the energy release from our reality disruptors. We're not trying to survive them, Harper said. We're trying to stop them. The alien commander's expression changed from concern to amusement. Stop them? Captain, you're Weapons cannot even scratch our hull. How do you propose to stop weapons that can tear holes in space-time? Like this, Harper said, and cut the communication channel. She turned to her crew. Execute the plan. Torres, fire the particle beam at the reality disruptors. Parker, upload the virus to the bioship. Collins, give me everything the engines have got. The Defiant sprang into action. The particle beam cannon, modified to match the exact frequency of Zephyrian crystal technology, fired a focused stream of energy at the stellar dominion. At the same time, Parker sent a disguised communication signal to the flesh render, carrying the logic bomb deep into the bioship's organic computer network. On the stellar dominion, Fleet Admiral Tissara watched in amazement as the human particle beam struck her ship. The beam should have been too weak to even register on their sensors. Instead, it hit the reality disruptors with perfect precision. What is happening? She demanded. Her tactical officer looked confused. The human beam is resonating with our crystal matrix. It's amplifying our own power and feeding it back into the system. The reality disruptors began to overload. Instead of tearing controlled holes in space-time, they started creating random distortions that spread through the ship's crystal structure. The stellar dominion shuddered as its own weapons turned against it. On the flesh render, War Master, Gortham was having his own problems. The logic bomb had infiltrated the bioship's decision-making network and was spreading confusion through every organic system. The Devour spores are receiving contradictory commands, his biosensors reported. They don't know what to consume. Gortham watched in horror as the spores designed to eat enemy ships began to turn on their own vessel. The bioship's immune. System was fighting the spores, creating chaos throughout the living vessel. But Harper's plan was not complete yet. She had positioned the Defiant between the two weapons for a reason. When the reality disruptors overloaded and the Devour spores turned chaotic, the interaction between the two forces would create a massive energy release. Both weapons are firing. Torres shouted. The overloaded reality disruptors shot twisted. Beams of space-time distortion toward the flesh render. At the same time, the confused Devour spores launched themselves toward the stellar dominion. The two attacks met in the space where the Defiant was positioned. Brace for impact. Harper ordered. The energy release was incredible. Reality twisted around the Defiant as space-time distortions met matter-consuming organisms. The ship's hull glowed white-hot as forces beyond human understanding raged around it. But something unexpected happened. The Defiant's simple construction, built from basic metal alloys, proved to be more resistant to exotic weapons than anyone had imagined. The ship was designed to be tough and reliable, not sophisticated. This simplicity saved it. The crystal ships of the Zephyrians were vulnerable to space-time distortions because their complex structures could be torn apart by reality shifts. The bioships of the Corvins were vulnerable to their own weapons because their organic systems could be consumed by the spores. But the Defiant was just metal and electronics. It had no crystal matrices to overload and no organic systems to consume. The exotic energies flowed around the ship like water around a rock. Hull integrity holding at 60%, Collins reported, amazement in her voice. We're actually surviving this. The two alien fleets watched in shock as the human ship sat in the middle of an energy storm that should have destroyed everything within a light year. The Defiant was battered and scarred, but it was still intact. More importantly, the interaction between the failed superweapons was channeling their energy harmlessly into hyperspace. Instead of destroying the star system, the weapons were burr. The silence in space was complete. Two massive alien fleets, each representing thousands of years of military tradition, waited for their commanders to speak. The USS Defiant floated between them, its hull scarred and blackened, but still intact. The small human ship had done what seemed impossible just hours before. Captain Lisa Harper waited for the alien commanders to respond to her question. She could see the confusion and shock on their faces as they struggled to understand what had just happened. Their most advanced weapons had been turned against them by a ship they considered primitive. Fleet Admiral Tisara was the first to break the silence. Her crystal features, usually so perfect and controlled, showed cracks of uncertainty. "Captain Harper," she said slowly, "your actions today have saved both our fleets from destruction. But they have also humiliated us in front of our own people." War Master Gortham nodded, his bark-like skin shifting as emotions played across his face. "My warriors will not understand how a single human ship could accomplish what neither of our fleets could do. They will think we are weak." Harper felt a surge of frustration. Even after everything that had happened, the aliens were still thinking about pride and reputation instead of the lives that could be saved. "With respect," Harper said, "your warriors are not the ones who will die if this war continues. It's the civilians on your worlds, the crews of your ships, the innocent people who just want to live their lives in peace." She paused, looking at both commanders on her split screen. "You want to know how we understood your technology so quickly? It's because we've spent our entire history fighting wars, just like this one. Wars where both sides had powerful weapons and refused to back down. Wars that killed millions of people for reasons that seemed important at the time, but look foolish. In hindsight," Lieutenant Ben Parker spoke up from his station. "Captain, I'm detecting movement in both fleets. It looks like some of the ships are powering down their weapons." Harper nodded. The ordinary crew members on both sides were probably as tired of fighting as everyone else. They had seen their comrades die in a war that seemed to have no end. Now they had witnessed something that might offer a way out. Commander Ryan Torres was monitoring the tactical situation. "Captain, both fleets are maintaining their positions, but they're not targeting each other anymore. It's like they're waiting for something." Harper realized what they were waiting for. The alien commanders needed a way to end the war without losing face in front of their own people. They needed someone else to take responsibility for the peace. "Fleet Admiral Tisara, War Master Gortham," Harper said, "I have a proposal." Both alien commanders looked at her with interest. "Let Earth mediate your peace negotiations," Harper continued. "Tell your people that the humans, as a neutral party, convinced you to end the war for the good of the galaxy. You can say that our different perspective allowed us to find solutions that you had not considered." Tisara's crystal features brightened slightly. That would allow both sides to agree to peace without admitting defeat. Gortham's glowing eyes flickered with what might have been hope. "My Federation Council would accept such an arrangement. The humans have proven they understand warfare in ways we do not." Harper smiled. "Then let's start talking. But first, both of you need to order your fleets to stand down completely. No more weapons, no more threats. Just ships maintaining position while we work out the details." Over the next several hours, the space around Kepler's Gate became the site of the galaxy's most unusual peace conference. The USS Defiant, tiny compared to the alien dreadnoughts, served as the neutral meeting ground. Representatives from both fleets came aboard the human ship to begin negotiations. The aliens were amazed by the Defiant's simple but effective design. Everything on the ship was built to be reliable and easy to repair. There were no crystal matrices that could overload, no biosystems that could be infected, just metal and electronics that worked under any conditions. "Your ship is like your solution to our war," observed Commander Velthy, a Zephyrian negotiator. "Simple, direct, and effective." Captain Kravath, representing the Corvan Federation, nodded in agreement. "We have been thinking in complex terms for so long that we forgot simple solutions could work. The negotiations were not easy. Both sides had legitimate grievances and real reasons for fighting. The war had started over trade routes and territory, but it had grown into something much larger. Pride, revenge, and fear had kept it going long after the original issues could have been resolved. Harper and her crew brought a different perspective to the talks. Humans had fought wars over similar issues throughout their history. They knew how conflicts could spiral out of control and how difficult it was to find a way back to peace. The key, Harper explained to the negotiators, is to focus on the future instead of the past. You can't change what has already happened, but you can prevent it from happening again. Lieutenant Amy Collins, the chief engineer, helped both sides understand each other's technology. The Zephyrians and Corvins had been fighting for so long that they had forgotten how much they could learn from each other. Your crystal technology could help our bioships process energy more efficiently, Collins pointed out to the aliens. And your bioadaptation systems could help crystal ships repair themselves during battle. The idea of cooperation instead of competition was new to both sides, but it made sense. They had been so focused on destroying each other that they had never considered working together. As the hours passed, the framework for a peace agreement began to emerge. The territorial disputes would be resolved through negotiation rather than warfare. Trade routes would be shared instead of fought over. Both sides would exchange technology and knowledge to rebuild what the war had destroyed. Most importantly, they agreed to establish a joint peacekeeping force that would prevent future conflicts from escalating into war. And they asked Earth to help train this force, recognizing that humans had a unique understanding of how to end conflicts. When the agreement was finally signed, both fleet commanders addressed their crews over open communication channels. They explained that the war was over, that the humans had helped them find a better way to resolve their differences. Fleet Admiral Tessara spoke to her crystal ships with dignity intact. The humans have shown us that true strength comes not from the power to destroy, but from the wisdom to find other solutions. We end this war not in defeat, but in recognition that some battles are won by choosing not to fight. War Master Gortham's words to his bioships were equally proud. The human ship proved that survival comes not from being the strongest, but from being the most adaptable. We have learned from them, and we are stronger for it. As the alien fleets began to disperse, many of the ships paused near the Defiant to send messages of thanks. The crews who had been fighting each other just hours before were now working together to search for survivors in the debris field. Captain Harper stood on her bridge, watching the former enemies cooperate in rescue operations. Lieutenant Parker was coordinating the search efforts, while Commander Torres helped direct traffic as ships moved through the area. Lieutenant Collins was already sharing repair techniques with both alien fleets. Captain, Parker said, we're getting a priority message from Earth Command. Harper nodded. News of the battle had probably reached human space by now. Earth would want a full report on what had happened. The face of Admiral Johnson, head of Earth's space fleet, appeared on the screen. His expression was a mixture of pride and amazement. Captain Harper, the entire galaxy is talking about what you did at Kepler's Gate. The Galactic Council wants to meet with you immediately. Harper felt a moment of concern. Are we in trouble, Admiral? Johnson laughed. Trouble? Captain, you've just ended the biggest war in galactic history with one ship and 200 crew members. The Council wants to offer Earth a permanent position as a mediator in interstellar conflicts. The bridge crew exchanged glances of amazement. Just days ago, the galaxy had dismissed humans as primitive creatures barely capable of space travel. Now they were being asked to help resolve conflicts between advanced civilizations. There's something else, Admiral Johnson continued. The Zephyrian Empire and the Corvin Federation have both applied to join a new alliance with Earth. They want to share their technology and knowledge with us." Harper smiled. "I think they're going to be surprised by what they learn from us, Admiral." As the Defiant prepared to return home, Harper took one last look at the space around. Kepler's Gate. The debris field was being cleared by crews from both former enemy fleets working side by side. Where there had been hatred and destruction just hours before, there was now cooperation and hope. The galaxy had learned something important that day. Advanced technology and ancient wisdom were not enough to solve every problem. Sometimes the best solutions came from a fresh perspective and the willingness to try something different. The USS Defiant, scarred but victorious, began its journey home. Behind them, two civilizations that had been enemies for 3 years were learning to be friends. And ahead of them, humanity's future among the stars looked brighter than ever. The arrogance that had defined the galaxy's attitude toward humans was gone, replaced by respect and recognition. Earth's children had proven that they bail